Welcome back to Mysteries of the Mind. Today's subject, schizophrenia. And before we get started, I wanted to let everyone know the artwork in this video is not mine. It was found through a simple Google search, and they are either inspired by schizophrenia or created by someone who was diagnosed as having schizophrenia. If you or someone you know created the artwork, please let me know or send me a message so I can properly credit them. I also wanted to let you know that so that when you were looking at some of the images, it could help you get a sense of how it makes someone feel when they're affected by this. For some people, it might make you uncomfortable, but maybe being uncomfortable for just a moment could help someone. Imagine for just a moment that you hear a voice that isn't there, but it is. Reality isn't real and you have no way of knowing the difference. For some people with schizophrenia, their world can be a terrifying place. Voices in their head, fearing for their lives, and hallucinations that make reality blur with fiction, leading many to believe that suicide is their only answer. This is why it is so important to talk about it. This and many other issues need to be openly discussed and not hidden in the shadows of shame, while it and other conditions steal the lives of the people we know and love. As I have stated in previous videos, there is no possible way I can fully explain every detail about schizophrenia, and I am no expert. I can merely scratch the surface. But I like to think of myself as an advocate for the misunderstood. I guess that is completely debatable. Schizophrenia is a serious, chronic, psychiatric illness. There is no single symptom that defines it. And there are 5 different types. Paranoid, usually having hallucinations and are always in a panicked state of mind. Catatonic is when the patient usually has stupors and is physically immobile. Disorganized, that's when they have disorganized thinking and speech, losing touch with reality. Undifferentiated is when a person doesn't fit any of the other categories. And then there's finally residual. That's when someone has had at least one episode but no longer exhibits any of the signs. What are some of the symptoms? Trouble with the difference between real and unreal. Not being able to think clearly, hard time managing emotions, delusions, hallucinations, disorganization, and I'm sure there are more that I don't even know about. And how is it diagnosed? It requires an extreme and thorough family history to gain insight into the psychotic symptoms, as the patient may not be fully aware of them or may also deny them. An early onset diagnosis or a prodromal phase, if discovered, can prevent the full onset of schizophrenia. Neuroimaging and lab tests do not determine the diagnosis. In fact, lab tests will result in a normal read. It requires a very deep evaluation to properly diagnose it. It is caused by a combination of genetics and environmental factors. There is also a separate diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder. It is very similar, but has a few distinct characteristics to assist with diagnosis. There are some myths and truths, especially with statistics and treatments. Let's start off with the most staggering of all of them. Worldwide, 1 out of every 125 people have schizophrenia. Which means if you know 125 people, then you know someone who was affected by this, which makes this conversation all the more important. The math with that statistic means this affects 50 million people worldwide. There are $60 billion spent on treatment each year. One of the treatments for schizophrenia is taking an antipsychotic drug. However, 14% of people who take the drugs show no sign of improvement. In fact, there are a lot of medications, but 50 to 70% don't take their medicine as prescribed. The risk of relapse off medication is 3 times greater than when they're on it. 10% of patients commit suicide. Patients who fail 2 or more drugs should be considered candidates for clozapine. It is highly underutilized and has an anti-suicidal effect for those with schizophrenia. Patients who show severe signs of harming themselves or others tend to become hospitalized, but it isn't necessary for every person diagnosed to have to live this way. Many of the drugs prescribed have severely negative side effects, which may be why most people don't take their prescribed drugs. When you're faced with schizophrenia and the horrible side effects, it makes one understand why someone diagnosed might not want to take their medications. Besides the light side effects of gaining weight, there's sedation, nausea, and then there's Parkinsonism, which is in and of itself another troubling diagnosis. There's also the rare blood disorder called agranulocytosis, a severe and dangerous lowered white blood cell count, most commonly of neutrophils, causing a neutropenia in the circulating blood. It is a severe lack of one major class of infection-fighting white blood cells. There's also tardive dyskinesia, a neurological disorder characterized by involuntary movements of the face and jaw, which again, if you're already having so many symptoms of hearing voices and seeing things that aren't there, you have to trade off involuntary movements of your face and jaw. In 2014, Anderson Cooper donned headphones for a schizophrenia simulator to feel what it's like to live with the disorder. The recorded voices interrupted his ability to complete a series of tests. The whispers and yells include aggressive phrases like, "You suck, and they know it," or comforting words like, "Don't worry." Cooper even finds having a normal everyday interaction incredibly difficult. He said he felt the urge to talk back to the voices, especially when they were negative and discouraging. He said it makes you feel completely isolated from everyone else around you. He said it was extremely eye-opening. I have left a link in the description box so you can experience this for yourself to gain better understanding, and I highly recommend it. There has become an exciting new way scientists believe they can diagnose this. They think that your mouth and its structure can help better diagnose it. They believe that how the roof of your mouth is formed can signal whether or not you are at risk of developing the condition. Schizophrenia may mean that you develop a harder, wider, tougher palate. In studies which have been carried out, it has been noted that these palate traits also correlate with the genetic mutations and flaws which trigger the onset of symptoms of schizophrenia. It is hoped that in the future this knowledge may help doctors to find other physical symptoms that can be used to diagnose the condition. This is a new development, and as with any new development, there will be plenty of other scientists who will dispute it. But it is hopeful nonetheless, because the earlier the diagnosis, the better the prognosis for the patient, and the better their quality of life. If someone you know or love is affected by this, you can do a few things that will help, not only help them feel better, but help you communicate more clearly. You need to accept that it's a real illness and it is difficult. Don't buy into the myth that someone with schizophrenia can't get better or live a full and meaningful life. Educate yourself. Set realistic expectations. Empower your loved one. I have left many links in the description box to help you further educate yourself, should you choose to do so. According to these statistics here, if you know more than 125 people, then at least one of them has a form of schizophrenia. And if you're not aware of someone having it, that means they may be suffering in silence. Or worse, They learned early on not to share this information with others because of their reactions and the ripple effects. I know this because it has affected my life personally, and the person diagnosed kept it hidden. And there might not be a worse feeling than understanding someone better after they pass away. With the astronomical numbers of persons living with this, you would think there would be a lot more medical advances to assist with treatment, and hopefully someday soon there will be. If you or someone you know or love is or has been affected by this subject, and you would like to see it featured here, please contact me through any of my social media links, or email me at DuchessDark676@gmail.com. See you next time.